Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and joining me today is Janice Goldmintz. Janice is the founder of Talk About Aging, and she helps children and their aging parents get in sync at any age, at any stage. With a master's degree in gerontology and years of personal experience, Janice has deep insight into what can be done to assist seniors in creating the highest quality of life possible. Janice uses that background to offer training and consulting services to help families navigate the overwhelm and create a communication plan that fosters the highest quality of life for everyone involved. Janice, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about this topic, and I love the concept behind what you're doing and the work you're doing because these conversations can be so tricky.
Yes, and it's not something that we are ever brought up to talk about. It's not something that we say, well, at a certain point, we should maybe talk to our parents about things we see going on, or our parents to come to us as the children of aging parents and saying, well, I have these concerns. We just don't do it. And so opening those conversations has to be somebody taking a first step and taking that leap of faith to say, we want to be ready. We want to be empathetic. We want to know what's going on as a family, because the more you work together as a family, the better your outcome is going to be.
Janice, why do you think that it's so difficult? Do you think we're trying to ignore the elephant in the room? I mean, obviously we're all getting older, but is that it? Is that what it boils down to? We just don't want to deal with it?
So if you look at what social media and our society and culture value, and if you look at it, it's youth. Everybody is plastic surgeryed up and Ozembic'd up and, hair dyed and everything like that. And it's in an effort to look younger. We don't value age to the same degree as we used to. There are certain cultures that I will say still do, but think about, Native people and their reliance on their elders or other cultures. We don't do that. Now, when somebody gets older, we think they don't know, they're out of touch. I know better. I'm more modern. We don't value that innate wisdom that people have gathered from getting older and things they've learned in their lives. So I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is that we watch those around us getting older and we think, I don't want some of those things to happen to me.
Yeah.
Especially if you have had somebody in your life that's had dementia or other health challenges, and you think, oh, if I don't talk about it, it won't happen. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. And so we kind of do hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, and hope that it will go away.
Yeah. So get us started. Let's pretend that you're working with somebody that hasn't had any of these conversations. How do they even get it started?
So one of the things that I suggest, and I have a checklist, if anybody's interested, I can send it to them, on the things to look for when you're with your aging parents, because there are red flags. There are things that if you see them, you might want to start thinking about, what does this mean? And things even as simple as unopened mail. If there's a big pile of unopened mail, or there's mail that's opened but not dealt with, there's bills that are unpaid, or you see there's collection notices, things like that. Things like looking at the cleanliness of the surroundings. A lot of people, if they're having company, will make sure their kitchen and their living room are cleaned up if they can. But if you go in the bathroom or you go in their bedroom and you see that it is not, and that's not how they usually do things, it is something to be aware of. Even things like communication, if you see that somebody is repeating themselves or they're not in touch with the conversation, there can be a number of things that can lead to that. It could be hearing loss, it could be dementia, it could be other things going on. Always good to keep note of that kind of a thing. I tell people to look in the fridge. Is there food in the fridge? Is there way too much food in the fridge?
I wouldn't have thought of that one.
Is somebody hoarding food? Is food spoiling because there's so much in there and it's not getting eaten? That is, another flip side of the problem. Is your parent gaining weight, losing weight without reason? I mean, there are people who say, I'm going on a diet, I'm going to lose weight or whatever, or it's a holiday and we're eating lots of good stuff. But those types of big health changes, if you notice mobility, if they're walking around and they're having more issues getting from point A to point B. So just keeping your eyes open and being observant. And not to say that any one of those things mean there's something majorly wrong, but it's just to keep in your mind. And my thought is start when there's nothing wrong. Sit down with your family and say, you know what? I would love to have this conversation. I know right now everything's good, but what would happen if? What would you want if? And letting people know that if challenges should occur, there's always the ability to change the plan, to pivot differently, to make different decisions, but have a baseline of, you know what, if I ever got sick, I might want a DNR, or I might want artificial nutrition, or I might want you to do everything possible, or I might not.
Is there a list of, you named a few things. Is there a handful of things that are like the primary focus points if you do start the conversations? Here's the topics you want to touch on?
Yes, there is a list. I can provide that again if your listeners would like that. Just I'll call them icebreakers for lack of a better way to say it. Just things to sit down and normalize these kinds of conversations with your family. One thing that I did with my parents when they were in their 70s is I had them do a baseline mini mental status because I thought, I want to have that. And I want their doctor to be aware of when they're healthy and normal. This is what healthy and normal looks like. And I asked him to do it and put it in their file. And unfortunately, or whatever you want to call it, both of my parents ended up with Alzheimer's disease. And I could say to the doctor, okay, pull out that baseline you had. Let's do some comparisons. And for programs that I took them to, I could show them this is where they started and this is where they are. And I think, again, having those kinds of conversations, making it normal, not in conditions when stress is happening. When you plan, then you have a better chance of having more of what you want to have happen and more input, more decision making that's based on fact and not stress.
I want to get back to the dementia in a minute, but I'm curious. So that baseline, is there, what types of things did you try to rate them on, if that's even the right word? What kind of things did you try to figure out where they stood so that you could then look back at it?
There's actually two standardized tests that are really helpful. One is called the mini mental status test, and the other is called the MOCA test. And they're both very similar. And it's things like you show them 3 animals. What are these animals? You show them a clock and you tell them, put on the clock 10 minutes after 3 and make sure that they put the hands on the clock where they need to go. Spell this word backwards. There's a whole bunch of standardized tests that really are indicative of where you are. And I would say most general practitioner doctors, if they don't know how to do the test, can hopefully recommend somebody who can. And again, if somebody wants that testing, I'm happy to do it with them if they want a baseline. It's not a hard thing to do, but it's very informative.
If you did it on your own, do they also provide like a way to read it out so you know, or do you need a professional to read it out for you?
I would say you want a professional to read it.
Okay, that's fair.
But I would say most doctors would have a recommendation of who they would suggest could do that for you.
Excellent. I didn't know there was something out there that you could do. That's great. Yeah. And do you suggest that you said 70, do you suggest it at 70? Is it variable? Like what's the best time?
I would say do it at 70. And if you're healthy and good, maybe do it again in 5 years.
Okay.
every 5 years.
So you can compare it.
If you see changes, one good thing is that the Alzheimer's Association has 10 warning signs for Alzheimer's. And I suggest anybody who has concerns if their loved one has Alzheimer's disease to go and look it up. Again, if you'd like, I can provide that for you. I have it in a nice PDF. So I can help you with that, because there are normal aspects to aging where your memory is not all there. And everybody thinks, oh, I don't know where my keys are. I have Alzheimer's disease. You don't. That's a very normal thing. It's when you start putting your keys in the freezer that it's a problem. We all misplace things. I don't care who you are. We're stressed and things happen. And you do it when you're 18 and you do it when you're 80. I mean, that's just normal behavior.
I was going to ask that question because I hear from so many, especially women too, I think in menopause and the brain fog sometimes, but I hear often about people like struggling to get the right word or forget the person's name or that they had an appointment.
And now, forgetting appointments, that's something that, again, you have to start watching if that's happening on a regular basis, because it means that you're not remembering a number of things. If you know that you have an issue with remembering an appointment, can you problem solve to say, okay, I need to write myself a note, or I need to put it in my phone, or I need to put a sticky up on the door, or write it on my calendar. So if you know that these things are happening and you can problem solve, it's generally not a problem. But if you can't figure out how to get around that, and then you continually start missing out on appointments, meetings, family gatherings, or whatever, then I would say, that is a warning sign to be looking for.
That's good information. So you had parents that had dementia, Alzheimer's, and I've heard you say that one of the hardest stages is when they know they don't know.
Yes.
Talk to us about what that looks like.
So when somebody is aware that they're not catching up on a conversation, or they know they should know something and they don't, there is that awareness at a certain stage of Alzheimer's disease where they know they don't know. They know that something is going on. I'll use an example of my mom. My mother, all of her life, had card games with her friends and played and played and played. And there came a point where this group of women said to her, you have to stop playing. And she's like, why? And they said, because you're not playing properly. So she knew that something was wrong. Nobody really said what it was, but she knew herself, if her friends are saying, you can't play with us anymore, it was very devastating for her. It was very devastating that something that she had spent so much of her adult life doing, and now being told by your friends, we can't have you playing with us because it affects the way we're playing.
It's so interesting to me because she had the mental capacity to know those were still her friends and trusted in something that they said to her. It would, she would believe it.
Yes.
But yet she didn't have the capacity to continue playing properly.
Right. She didn't know how to change and do it differently because you only know what you know, right?
Yeah.
And it was hard.
I bet.
And I think it happens with a lot of people, that there are things that they do that they know they have done and now can't remember. One of the things that for me, and I don't know how much my mother realized this, but I certainly did. There was a point where my mother would phone me over and over and over and over. And it would drive me crazy because I'd be at work and she'd be calling me. And then came a time where she stopped calling because she didn't know how to use the phone anymore. And for me, that was very hard to take because as much as the other bothered me, now knowing that she can't do that anymore, was tough. I don't know if she knew that she had lost that ability, but I did.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard people talk about before is how our natural inclination is to try to correct someone that has dementia. So they are remembering something differently, very differently than the reality.
Right.
And I think many times we want to say, no, 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 you didn't, you didn't do this, you did that, or that wasn't here, that was this, or whatever the situation, right?
Mhm.
But I've heard that you shouldn't do that. What's your position on that?
So we do that naturally. We just do. Oh, you were supposed to turn left here and not right. You were going to go and pick this up at this place and you went to that place, or whatever that is. In the beginning, when you don't know that somebody is experiencing those kinds of cognitive issues, you just think, well, if I tell you, it's going to be helpful.
Yeah.
And for some people, if you don't have a cognitive issue, it is helpful. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I went the wrong way, or I was going to go there and I went there, whatever that is. But again, it's looking at how often this is happening. And if you start seeing a pattern, that's when you should be looking at those red flags. What I've heard so many people say is once their loved one was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, is they said, oh, I feel so guilty. I feel so bad for correcting and saying and yelling and all of that. And again, you can't change what was, but if you see that kind of thing, or if you know that that person has a cognitive issue, and it doesn't hurt for them to be wherever they are or do whatever they want to do, go into their world.
Mm.
My dad used to say that he's living on the farm, which is somewhere that he always wanted to and never did. And I would ask him, so what's on the farm? What are you seeing? What are you doing on the farm today? Now, my father was living in a retirement residence. He was certainly not on a farm. But going into his world, it didn't hurt me to say, what do you see? So I think that that's part of what we have to think about is what is the value of correcting them?
Yeah.
It's not like don't touch a hot stove. You know what I mean? If somebody's
Yeah.
going to do that, obviously you're not going to let them do that. Or if there's a safety issue. But if it's they're in their own world or they're something that they're talking about that doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just go into their world.
So your dad was in a home, and
Yeah.
that was going to be one of my questions is what advice do you have for people that are grappling with that decision? Because I think it's often a really hard one for a lot of people, and
Yes.
a lot goes into it. So do you have any advice around that?
There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle.
Mm.
I think for many people, unfortunately, it's cost. That's their number one determinant. Do I have the money to put my loved one in a place that is going to be able to care for them in the way that's going to be best? And for some people, they don't. And they have to rely on government funded places. And not to say that they're all bad. They are not all bad. You just have to be very aware of what goes into that particular place and choose wisely. You have to talk to other families that have loved ones there and let them be honest with you because that's what you need. Are you getting good care? Is your loved one happy there? All of those things are really important. If you do have the financial wherewithal, then you have more choices. Is it somewhere that's close to you that you can get to that person if you want? If you live in a different city, is there some kind of oversight that you can have to make sure that they're being cared for? Are they able to care for your loved one at all stages of whatever goes on with them, physical and cognitive? Again, there's so many things that go into it. And if somebody is in that situation and would like some guidance, I'm more than happy to do that.
What do you suggest I guess I was going to ask about putting them in a home, but I guess it could also relate to their care in general or arrangements in general. What if your siblings are not on the same page? That's got to happen. You're smiling, but that's got to happen all the time. Yeah.
All the time. Or the kids all say, you should go somewhere. And the parents are saying, no, I'm staying where I am.
Yeah.
Or you have one child that sides with the parents and another child that's saying no. My biggest piece of advice is whatever plan you're making, it has to be for the betterment of everybody, the parents and the kids. Because if the kids are running around like chickens without heads on, making sure that their parents are okay, no matter if they're at home or they're in a facility or they're
Mm,
in a retirement residence, whatever it is. That's not to the benefit of the kids. That's not helping them if they don't have peace of mind. So it's something that everybody has to create a plan overall for the betterment of everybody. And it can be tough because one kid may say this and one
yeah.
kid may say that. The other thing is one child may be comfortable on the financial side and another child may be helpful or more aware on the medical side. And so if that's the case, then go to your strength. Do what you do best. And be aware that your sibling or whatever may need your support at times when you need a rest, and be willing to take those things on. What I see a lot as well is where there's only one child. There is no one else. There is only one child, and that child takes on the whole burden. And in those cases, I tell that child, do you have cousins? Do your parents have their own siblings that are um, that could be helpful for you? Friends of yours, people who are in your neighborhood, people in your faith community that can help you so that you don't feel like you are shouldering everything yourself, because it can be very tough. And a lot of people are working, so they're balancing their family and their own life and their parents, and they're the only one, and it can be challenging. Or you can hire people who can help you, geriatric case managers and other people who can take some of that burden away from you
Yeah.
so that you can have a more balanced life.
Managing work, family, and caregiving. And a lot of us now have caregiving responsibilities in both directions. So it's a lot. It's just a lot. And there's only so many hours in a day, no matter how great you are at handling lots of things. So, I mean, other than asking others to chip in, which is, that's number one, do you have any other advice around that?
So it's going to sound funny, but one of the biggest pieces of advice is that the word no
Mm,
is okay. You can say no. You can say, no, I'm not available. No, I can't do that. And you have to find your balance. Stressing yourself out or making yourself ill while taking care of a parent or anybody is not going to be to the advantage of anyone. If you are working and you're finding that that's very stressful, I suggest seeing if your workplace can help you. A lot of larger workplaces have employee assistance programs, and there may be something they can do to help you, or to help you have more flexible hours, or even emotional support, mental health support. All of those things that can help you get through these challenges are really important. And self-care. Sometimes you have to just step back and say, okay, this is my 2 hours for me today. I'm going to go get my hair cut. I'm going to go shopping, or I'm going to go to the library and just sit there for 2 hours and just read, or whatever it is that makes you happy. You have to have that part as well so that you can recharge your own batteries and be available to do all the other things that you have to do in your life.
that makes tons of sense. Do you have any words of wisdom for people that really feel guilty? Because I get the say no and I get the do the self-care to take care of yourself. But I also get that comes often with a feeling of guilt, a guilty that you said no, or a guilty that you even took 2 hours out of the day for yourself because you could have been doing XYZ or visiting mom or dad or whatever the situation. So any words of wisdom there?
This is a really interesting thing. I'm going to refer to a terrific thing that I just read, and I suggested to everyone, and I'm sure people have heard it. It's the Mel Robbins Let Them theory.
Yeah.
The truth is, the only person that can make you feel guilty is you, only you. And the truth is, people are going to say, why didn't you do this? And how come you're not doing that? And you may say it to yourself.
Yeah.
You may say to yourself, I should be doing this. But the truth is, everything is balance and everything is for well-being. And if you are not taking care of yourself, I always use this analogy. Think about when you go on the plane and the oxygen drops down and the attendant says, put it on yourself first before you worry about somebody else.
Yeah.
In this case, it's exactly the same. Care for yourself as well, if not first, as well, so that you are able to care for your loved one. Because if you don't care for yourself, you won't be able to help anybody. And you want to be able to do that. And if you need help with mental health issues, that again, speak with your doctor or somebody that can help you find a way to manage all of those challenges and stresses. And they're very real.
Yeah.
It's not I should be able to soldier on and I should be able to do that. Some people can and some people can't. And you have to know where your line is to say, I need help.
Surely you learned a lot of this along the way. So I have to ask, having dealt with the dementia for two parents, what was your biggest lessons out of it? Is that your same lesson, or what was the biggest lesson that you took away?
So I think for me, a couple of things. One is even with my background, I made lots of mistakes.
That's so great, though, to hear you say, not great that you had to go through that, but it's great that you're being transparent about that, because for the rest of us that don't have the background, surely we're going to make mistakes. And I guess it sort of lets us off the hook when I hear you say that.
I made lots of mistakes. The one thing that I learned is, and it's sort of my why of why I do what I do, is you need to be the voice for somebody who cannot speak for themselves.
Mm.
Because if you don't, people will be taken advantage of. You may not get all the treatment that you are paying for with, certain places. Advocacy is probably the biggest thing, is being able to say, okay, I want the best life for my loved one, and this is my expectation. And if you have said you're going to provide A, B, C, D, I expect you to provide A, B, C, D. And don't worry, again, if they don't, people don't love the way that you are advocating, that's okay. Always be respectful and understand that everybody is doing their best, you hope, but it doesn't mean to back down. And that I think is probably one of the biggest lessons, is it's okay to advocate for somebody who cannot do it for themselves. And one other thing is, if you are dealing with somebody who has dementia, make memories. That loved one for you, they may not remember 5 minutes after you walked away, but you will. And those are your memories. And get your loved one on video, tape their voice, get them to write things for you. Because I will tell you, my father has since passed away. Both of my parents have passed away, but I have videos of them and I have pictures, and that's my memories that I get to keep because I made them. I will say that there are people who have a harder time dealing with watching their parents change.
Yeah.
And don't want to really watch that kind of transition.
Yeah.
And as much as I understand it, I feel like they're missing out on some of those great moments that are still possible with your loved one. They may not be the person that they were when you were 10 years old, but they're still your parent. And there's so much there.
When I think about that, that's got to be so tricky to navigate. Just you want them to show up as they always did, and they don't, and trying to build a relationship with that person. And sometimes they're physically healthy-ish.
Yes.
But but it's the mental capacity.
It also happens on the physical side. You may have your parent may be cognitively, fine, but let's say they have some kind of they have arthritis and they can't move around, or they've had a stroke and that's affected their mobility. Their cognitive nature is still there, but they're still a different person than they were.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch. There's no two ways about it. It's hard to watch somebody change. But I guess my thought is, what is the alternative? That's your parent. And it's the same with, as we watch our children grow, when they're little and we can carry them around and we can do fun stuff with them, and then they become teenagers and They don't want anything to do with us for a number of years, and then that's sad for us to watch them transition, and then they're adults and they have kids and get married and they want to be back, as part of the close part of the family. And you watch them have their own life, and so your part in their life changes all the time.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing. It's the natural evolution of relationships. And, you have to think of, what can I do to have the closest relationship possible and foster that? And one thing that we didn't talk about that I also want to acknowledge, that there's families where there's discord in the family long before something happens. And then you're faced with a challenge. Well, I haven't really been close with my parent. Now they need help. I don't know how to deal with this. I don't really want to care for them because of
Yeah.
things that have happened. And again, these are decisions that you have to make in your best conscience. It's not for me to tell you you should care for them or you shouldn't care for them. There are considerations that, again, I think with maybe even professional help, you can come to your best solution for everyone, for you and for your parent, given your own situation. But it does happen a lot.
Yeah, I bet. I bet, right? You don't get this far into life without having some ups and downs that you have to work through. I want to go back to when we were talking about being in the home and you were talking about advocating for your person. And I started to think about, you alluded to the fact that sometimes you don't get the care that you signed up to get. And obviously there's some signs that would kind of jump out at you. The person's not well kept. Their, room's not clean. They're losing weight crazy and they shouldn't be because they don't have a health reason that would make them, things that sort of would bop us on the head. Are there signs that are less obvious or questions that are less obvious that you can give us advice on?
So I'll give you a great example. It's
Sure.
kind of funny, couple of things for me. I paid for my dad to be taken to the bathroom a certain number of times during the day. And I visited him a lot. So he was kind of lucky in that I kind of oversaw a lot of what went on. And I would look at my watch and I'd go, I think it should be time for somebody to come and take him to the bathroom. And lots of times it didn't happen. Or take him to a meal. That's when it's really obvious. If you have somebody who is taking your loved one to a meal, it's meal time and they're sitting there. And so I noticed it and I brought it to the attention of the staff, and I didn't see things change. And I started taking a little notebook and writing down, on March 4th, didn't take them. March 10th, didn't take them. And I went to them and said, here's all these days where I took my dad for his meal. I'm paying you X dollars to do this. Either I'm not going to pay you or you're going to do it. You can do it in a nice way, but those are things to keep track of.
I didn't even know that was I didn't know that was a thing, that you could pay for like an add-on service like that. I didn't even know that.
Everything is an add-on.
Of course it is.
Especially in private care. So things like having laundry done, things like having, let's say, showering more than a couple of times a week, if you want that, they would charge for that. Medication oversight, taking to meals, taking to programs. I'm trying to think of all the things I paid for.
So wait, if you don't pay for that, if you don't pay for medication oversight,
they expect the person to go to the wellness center and go and get their own medication.
Wow.
Now, this isn't everywhere. This is private pay kind of thing. I would say a government run, you're not going to have that kind of thing, but you're also not going to have the same number of staff or other kind of oversight. So if you're doing an activity, you may not have everybody have somebody to be available to go and bring them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to think about if you're thinking about aging in place or going somewhere else, in terms of getting them the best choice. One of the things that I tell people about aging in place, if your loved one has a lot of social support and people are visiting and you're able to be with them a lot, that's a terrific idea. But if the person is going to be sitting at home alone while you're at work, or there is just nobody there. I don't think that's the best solution because we all need to be in relationship with people. That's what gets us going.
Mm.
And you want to have the ability to socialize, whether it's with your family, whether it's with people who are your own age, whatever it is, whether it's going to a day program and having that person there and then come home later, which is also aging in place, but also providing other types of activities that can be done, not necessarily at home. So there's such a wide range of things that can be done. And it's hard always to know what's out there. And it's being, again, curious and asking questions. Well, what does this place offer and what can they do there? And go to the government and say, what do you offer? What are your suggestions? It's asking a lot of questions too.
Yeah, as you're sitting there saying it, what's running through my head is who knew? Who knew there was all these things to think about? Like that many details, right? Obviously the should I go, should I stay kind of thing, that's an obvious, but all the details in between, who knew? And then I'm feeling like most people, I don't have any facts to back this up, so you tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like most people probably don't think about these things until they're in it, until it's happening, right? And that's probably the worst time to think about it because you have a lot of stressors added to the situation. Am I wrong?
You're 100% right. And part of what I really want to bring to people is be proactive. Start
Yeah.
talking about these things before they happen so that you know what your loved one wants. The other things that I tell people is to have your what I call your red file that has your bank account information, your lawyer, your accountant, where's your insurance, what kind of pensions do you have? If you're owning a home, where is your deed? All of those things that if something should happen, somebody can go and grab this file and
Yeah.
say, here's all the information. Now, maybe you have it on a thumb drive or you have it somewhere, or if you don't want everyone in your family to have access to it, you have one person that knows where it is. But if there is a time where there's a challenge, or you need to know who is my health proxy, who is my financial proxy, so that you have that at hand when you need it. If you don't have that done before, in some cases, it's too late.
Yeah.
Then somebody else is taking on the challenge of caring for your loved one in a way that you may not want them to, or your parent or whomever may not want to be taken care of. So have those conversations and normalize them. But it is hard because people, as I said, sometimes you put up a sign, hey, this is, are you prepared for your parents? Oh, it's not me. I'm not there. And then when it is them and they're like, oh my God, where were you? I need, now I need you.
Yeah.
Used to that.
I get it. It's a human thing, I think that yeah. But I do think, again, like I started this, I appreciate the work you're doing because I think it's so important for the reasons that you're mentioning. I think the more people that think about these things early and can get in front of them, you're just going to have a better chance at making the situation the best possible when you've kind of had a chance to plan it out, especially if you plan it together.
Yes. And the other thing is you have to look at the demographics of our society. The baby boomers are now in that bubble where I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to need a much higher degree of care than they may now. And being prepared today, I took out long-term care insurance. Now, I hope not to use that for a very long time, but I have it. And by the time I'm that age that I need it, it will probably not cover very much. But at least it's something so that my kids aren't going, oh, geez, where are we going to, where's the financial stability going to come from? They'll have at least that little bit. And thinking about those things, what would I need to have in place in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever that might be, and have it done. Peace of mind, I think, is a really important thing to think about, and it's for everybody. It's for everybody. Share these things with your health practitioner as well. If something happened to me, this is what I would want, and this is what I wouldn't want. And have a team, have a team approach that everybody knows what everybody would want. It makes it so much easier when something does happen.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about. And I came into this thinking, we're mostly focused on how to deal with it when it's our parents. But what you just said there is a reminder that we need to start thinking about it for ourselves as
Yes.
well, and start the conversations with our children and start the prep for our children, not just dealing with our aging parents.
Because I really believe that our children watch what we do with our parents. That's where they're going to learn. And if we are a certain way with our parent, they're going to think that's the way I should be with mine.
Yeah.
So I joke with my kids about that all the time. I'm very lucky. My kids were really involved in caring for my parents. And my son has said to me, well, when you're older, you can come and live with me. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want to do that. I wouldn't want to affect his life in that way. Now, I'm saying that today. In 20 years or 25 years, I may go, yeah, open the door, here I come. Who knows? So again, I do want to stress that, is that the plan you make today is fluid. It may not be what you do down the road. It can change. So many things happen and your mind changes and different things happen. But just the fact of planning and having the openness within your family to be able to say, all right, this is what's going on. And if something should happen, to be able to say, okay, I'm calling a meeting. You may not be aware that this has happened, and now we need to figure something else out.
What great advice. So where can people find you and all this wisdom that you have?
So a few things. You're more than welcome to email me, janice@talkaboutaging.com. You can read more about what I do on my website, which is talkaboutaging.com, www.talkaboutaging.com. I also have a Facebook page, Talk About Aging, and I have an Instagram account, Aging Parent Journey. And that's really for the children of the aging parents. My hope there is that you're going to learn how to deal with these things, ask questions. I'm more than happy to do that. If you want some resources by PDF, again, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to send the 10 signs of Alzheimer's, what to look for if you go on a visit with your family, icebreaker conversation words, whatever it is that might work for you. Happy to provide that as well.
Thank you so much for sharing the resources and for talking with us today. Such great information to get people thinking. Thank you.
One thing that I just do want to say, because it's something that that comes up a lot. People use the word dementia and Alzheimer's interchangeably. And I just want to explain the difference. It's like the difference between fruit and orange. Dementia is fruit, Alzheimer's is orange. There's a number of different dementias. And if you think about Bruce Willis, he has a different one. His is frontal temporal dementia. So, and they're all slightly different. They all have different symptoms. So even if you see the 10 Alzheimer's disease signs and you still have concerns, please go and see your health practitioner, because it might be a different kind of dementia that you may not be looking for.
That's a great point. Thank you for that clarification. So much wisdom. Thank you for joining us today. It's a great conversation. Seriously, it really is, and much needed information that needs to get out there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Message in the Middle with Marianne. If you enjoyed the podcast, please take a minute to share it and write a review, as it helps bring new listeners to our audience. If you'd like to keep the conversation going between episodes, please join us at Facebook group Message in the Middle with Marianne.